Namaste. Hello everybody. I am Miss Dipali Mahida, working as an assistant professor in MB Patel College of Education. Friends, today in our studio we have Dr. Alka Makwan as well. She is also working as an assistant professor in MB Patel College of Education. Today we will be sharing our views on the topic Plato's objection to poetry. Now, before we start our discussion, I would like to throw light on Plato's background. Plato was born in Athens in an aristocratic family. Reading Plato is not just an exercise in intellectual archaeology. Plato's project is a continuing project, a continuous conversation that has been taking place for more than 2000 years. Next slide, please. Now, before we proceed, I would like to share some views on historical context of Plato's time. The year 500 BC to 300 BC is marked as the golden age of Greece. It is termed as the golden age of Greece because it marked the development of great philosophers like Socrates, Plato and Aristotle. As I said earlier that Plato was born in Athens in a wealthy aristocratic family. He is groomed very nicely. He took his initial training in army, in music, in arts, as well as he travelled to Sicily and some other parts of all over the world. He died at the age of 81 years. Now, if we remember the connection between Plato and Socrates, we can say that Plato was the student of Socrates. Almost all we know about Socrates is from Plato's writings. After Socrates' execution for corrupting the young and neglecting the gods, Plato left Athens in disgust and travelled widely. Now, if we go to the origin of the name Plato, Plato originally named Aristocles after his father Ariston, but afterwards he was nicknamed Plato by his wrestling coach, since Plato is the Greek word for broad, probably referred to the width of his forehead or shoulders. Plato was the most distinguished disciple of Socrates. The 4th century BC, to which he belonged, was an age of inquiry, and as such his chief interest was philosophical investigations, which form the subject of his great works in form of dialogues. So, after discussing the background of Plato, now let us listen to Alka for political and societal scenario of Plato's time.
As Dipali said that Plato was a philosopher, he offered his opinions regarding the social spheres of life. We know that at that time it was a participatory democracy. Participatory democracy means people used to participate freely in the democracy. Plato was against it. He believed that if people are participating, then they would be exercising their emotions. They will be going away from their rationality. So he was against that participatory democracy. There was a citizen army. It means the army was formed of the citizens. Citizens used to play an important role in the army. Plato was against it because he knew that people are engaged into emotional behavior and they are going away from the rationality. So, friends, we can say that Plato was against participatory democracy. If we talk about the education during that time in Athens, we can say that education was in a sorry state. Homer was taught in the school. Homer was the part of the studies. And if we check the epics of Homer, we can understand that it was instigating the emotional part of the person. Homer's epics were misinterpreted also. and misrepresented also. So Plato was against poetry. Even women were regarded inferior to human beings. Slavery was widespread during that time. Best time of Greek literature was over. Corruption and degeneration in literature was found in almost every literature. Confusion was prevailed in the all spheres of life, intellectually, morally, politically, and educationally. Confusions were there. This was the scenario, political and societal, during the time of Plato.
So, Alka, we can say that due to this political and societal scenario, Plato was made to think over the situation, and then he commented about the art and its ill effects on the society.
You are right. When there is a chaos in the society, thinkers like Plato cannot stop thinking.
Right.
He has a concept of ideal state and ideal statement in his mind. Let us see some of the characteristics of ideal statement. The first is rationality. According to Plato, rationality is the first value which a person should exercise in his life. Going away from rationality cannot be entertained according to Plato. He gave a very good phrase, guard dog temperament, for the statements to be developed. Guard dog temperament means developing desired temperament in the citizens so that they can protect the state. We have earlier seen that the state was in a very degenerated form. Thinkers like Plato and Socrates wanted it to be generated, and that is why he wanted people to get rationally developed, and for that he gave this term guard dog temperament. He also wanted the statement to be helpful and protective to the people of the city. He wanted them to be fearless and aggressive in pursuing the enemies. He wanted the statesmen to be future guardians. He knew that if the state is in decayed condition, it is the statesman's duty to guard the state, and that is why he encouraged people to develop rationality rather than emotionality.
Okay, so Alka, we can say that with this particular idea of ideal state and ideal statement in his mind, Plato started discussing all these ideas in the form of dialogue, and most of his work or most of his ideas are presented in dialogue form. And approximately it is said that all his ideas are scattered in 24 to 30 dialogues with Socrates or with other citizens, politicians and statements of that particular time.
If we check his dialogues, we can say that the early phase of the dialogues, we can see the influence of Socrates. These ideas contain the ideas from Socrates. The middle dialogues, we can see the ideas of Plato and Aristotle. But in the later part of the dialogue, we can find Plato's pure ideas. Although there was the influence of his guru, his
Socrates, right.
He developed certain ideas. But remember that his main aim of giving the dialogue was he wanted each and every citizen of Athens to be a guard for the future of Athens. And that is why he wrote these dialogues. The most important work of Plato was The Republic. Let us see some highlights of The Republic. This is the most remarkable criticism, and it is the longest work. It has more than 450 pages. It is written in dialogue form, and it addresses major issues in almost all the branches of philosophy.
Alka, I would like to also add that this work, The Republic, it is popularly termed as a treatise on justice, a treatise on education, as well as a treatise of jurisprudence. So it is the most remarkable and well-known work of Plato.
As I already told, that Plato had a concept of ideal statement in his mind.
Right.
And in his Republic, he gave the concept, what is a good life? For him, a good life is one in which a person exercises his rationality.
Right.
Enjoyment, satisfaction from emotional engagements is not the aim of good life. So this was projected in his work, The Republic.
Furthermore, he also said that the good life is one in which an individual has self control over his emotions, and it should not be a life of just immoral enjoyments. So, these ideas are projected there in the Republic.
Friends, we have already discussed that Plato has given importance to philosophical life. It means life with ideas. In his Republic, he has written three major aspects of life. The first is philosophy of cosmology. If we understand the word cosmology, it means theory about the origin and nature of universe. But it is very essential for us to understand what is philosophical cosmology according to Plato. According to Plato, the whole universe is an idea originally. It is an idea in the mind of the God. This is the basic assumption of Plato's philosophy. There is a soul of God which can be called macrocosm. In Indian context, it can be called samasti. This soul is connected with the soul of man, which is a microcosm. In Indian context, it is called vyasti. The whole idea of universe is there in the mind of God. It is at the same time in the mind of man also, but it is in the innate form. When the mind of man travels from the ideal mind, the mind of the God, the macrocosm soul, it travels to the world and engages into the worldly affairs, it forgets that the original idea. And this is how we forget the original idea and we think of what is unreal as the real. We can here talk about the analogy of the cave. We are a student of literature, we are aware of the analogy of the cave. You might be knowing the story also. There was a big cave. In that cave, some prisoners were staying. They were kept there in the cage. They were set in such a way that they were facing the wall. Behind the place where they were sitting, there was a fire. And because of the fire, whatever was being done over there, a shadow was casted on the wall. The prisoner used to watch that shadow only, and they were thinking that this shadow is the real shadow. Between the prisoners sitting and the fire, there was a pathway. There many people used to walk. The prisoner used to see the shadow of those people. They used to see the shadow of different activities carried out by the people, and they were thinking that these shadows were the real thing. When they were taken outside of the cave and they saw the people doing quite many activities, they interpreted that these real activities are not the real activities, but they are the shadows of what they have seen on the wall. This exactly happens when we forget the reality. In philosophical cosmology, Plato talks about this philosophical belief. Let me remind you that idea is the most important thing for Plato. It is of the supreme value. Under philosophical theology, he says that God is of the supreme value and we have to invoke God to go nearer to the idea. About his philosophical anthropology, I would like to say that the whole universe is created from the idea innate in the God's universal and absolute mind. Hence, man is the creation of God's ideas. Man has a pool of ideas within his mind. When they are put to operation, society, culture, religion, and even the physical world come into existence. This ideaism, not idealism, is embedded in cognitive expression. This rationality is fogged by any emotional act of a person. So friends, we have seen philosophical cosmology, philosophical theology and philosophical anthropology of Plato. This makes it clear that for Plato, idea was the absolute thing. Idea was to be professed or to be given importance. We cannot give importance to the things we see because idea of that thing is of most important thing.
So, Alka, we can say that when Plato constructed his dialogues or his views in the Republic, this philosophical cosmology, philosophical anthropology, and philosophical theology, these are the foundations for the construction of the book The Republic by
Yes,
Plato.
you are right. Any theory is founded on certain assumptions, and this philosophical cosmology, theology, and anthropology are the
Anthropology.
foundation of the theory through which he objected poetry.
Poetry. Okay, so as Alka rightly discussed the foundations for the book The Republic by Plato, now let us talk about the nature of dialogues given by Plato. Plato's works span approximately 30 dialogues. These dialogues are in the form of dramatic conversations with statements, citizens, and other recognizable names from Plato's time and earlier. Now, here Socrates is the main interlocutor. Interlocutor is the person with whom one is conversing. Plato founded a school of philosophy in Athens known as the Academy, and Aristotle was one of his students. Now, from the nature of his dialogues, we can say that